With an estimated 2,000 deaths during its formidable years, Missouri State Penitentiary was infamously dubbed the bloodiest 47 acres in America by Time magazine. The incredibly horrifying high number of violent assaults was not just isolated to the inmates, but anyone who stepped inside the walls was considered fair game. From noteworthy inmates such as lone assassin James Earl Ray and bank robber turned cop killer Pretty Boy Floyd, to being featured in blockbuster movies and countless television shows, Missouri State Penitentiary opened its doors back in 1836 and was eventually decommissioned in 2004. At the time of its closure, it was the oldest continually operating prison west of the Mississippi. With 39 executions in the prison's iconic gas chamber, several documented escapes, and a deadly riot in 1954, it's no wonder why many consider it to be the most haunted prison in all of America. But the horrors at Missouri State Pen didn't end there. Come with us as we take you behind the walls of America's most notorious prison.
Alright, so this is the main cell block entrance here. This blue and white pops real nice. Beautiful colors. All this ornate ironwork going up each of the stairways. Look at this. Mailbox for the inmates, of course.
Located in the state capital of Jefferson City, the centuries-old Missouri State Penitentiary still stands proud, towering high above the muddy banks of the Missouri River, while still serving as a standing symbol of the criminal justice system and its evolution over time. The prison first opened its doors back in 1836 and operated for a whopping 168 years before finally closing down in 2004. The Missouri State Penitentiary, often referred to as MSP for short, has a truly unique architectural design with its distinctive Gothic Revival style buildings and giant intimidating stone walls, solidifying the harsh reminder of a now bygone era within our country's criminal justice system.
It's a pretty grand entrance here. And you can see those doors down there. And then the stairways coming up.
So right here we got the controls for all the cell doors.
Throughout its long and storied history, the prison housed some of the most notorious criminals in the state of Missouri, as its imposing walls bore witness to the harsh realities of incarceration during the troubled times of the 19th and 20th centuries. Not only did Missouri State Penitentiary serve as a central hub for the state's most dangerous and violent offenders, but in addition, it was also known for housing the inmates who were sentenced to hard labor in the most extreme conditions with constant isolation. Built using prisoners' grueling physical labor, the penitentiary's imposing walls and guard towers were meant to deter potential escape attempts and remind inmates of their deserving confinement. One former inmate coined the catchy phrase, "misery in Missouri," referring to what life was like behind bars at MSP.
So we were told that they would actually have 2 sets of bunks in here and up to 6 inmates per cell. They said some of the cells had bunks stacked on top of each other, where basically 4 people were sleeping on top of each other, and then 1 to 2 people were on the ground in front of the toilets, which is hard to even imagine how tight that must have been for the inmates. I mean, just 2 people in there is extremely tight, let alone 4 to 6. This is Charles Arthur, Pretty Boy Floyd. He was an American bank robber. Criminal exploits gained widespread press coverage in the 1930s. Floyd and Adam became primary suspects in the Kansas City Massacre, June 17, 1933.
Another guard shack over here. Their cell numbers, start date, end date. That's cool because it closed in September of '04. And look at those dates. So you see the cage, fence, whatever, all the way up and all the way around. Obviously, that is so that the inmates couldn't throw other inmates over and kill them, or badly injure them, or themselves. Jump, because it is a drop down there.
Over the years, the penitentiary became a constant cycle of brutality and despair, as inmates faced harsh living conditions and cruel, unusual punishments. In the prison's early years, inmates were subject to forced labor in the sweltering heat with inadequate food and next to no medical care.
The county sheriff implemented the death sentence for the state until the 1930s, when the Missouri State legislature shifted that duty to the state and authorized the building of the gas chamber. The 3 men on the gallows killed 3 prison employees while shooting their way out of the Missouri State Penitentiary. Edward Raymond, George Ryan, and Harry Vaughn were captured, tried, and hung side by side on June 27, 1907, by the Cole County Sheriff. Their accomplice was shot and killed by the authorities during the escape.
As the prison population expanded, overcrowding became a serious issue, leading to even more violence and civil unrest among the inmates. Anyone who broke the rules were often sent to the hole, a dark and dank solitary confinement cell where they were left to languish in pure isolation.
Carl Austin Hall and Bonnie Brown Hetty kidnapped 6-year-old Bonnie Greenlease, killed him, and then demanded a ransom from the family. The Greenlease family paid the ransom of $600,000, not knowing that their son was already dead. The murderers were executed on December 18, 1953. The Kansas City Star printed the sketch on Friday, December 18, 1953, as part of its coverage of the execution.
I am not exactly sure what it says. It almost looks like it's in code. Okay. I think it says, please subscribe to Abandoned Central on YouTube. Oh, okay. No, I'm just kidding. But look, here's some more artwork. Fancy. Odin has you all. Okay. Fire hose here. Gotta be prepared. Missouri State Penitentiary was nicknamed the Wall because of how giant the wall was that went all the way around and surrounded the property. And it was also known as the bloodiest 47 acres in America for all of the inmate violence that happened in this place. Can you imagine the stories? This is a unique one. Africa. I'm not sure if... God, that's really cool. This took some time. Well, they had time. This looks like ocean waters over here. This looks like sun, moon, and earth or something. No, planets. I don't know. And then again, Africa. Some pyramids up there. What's this, the all-seeing eye? More pyramid. But anyways, yeah, this place was absolutely violent, bloody, chaotic.
This is how James Earl Ray escaped. He got into a container inside of a bread truck and escaped that way as the bread truck was leaving. This is James Earl Ray's cell. He did time here and at Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary. I believe he broke out of here twice and escaped. He got caught one time, and then I believe the second time he didn't get caught, made it all the way to Tennessee, and then that is when he assassinated Martin Luther King, and then spent the rest of his days alive inside the Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary.
Eventually, the prison ended up housing over 5,200 offenders, a number 10 times higher than that of Alcatraz. It was also the primary reason, that coupled with the prison's aging infrastructure, that were the driving force behind MSP's 2004 closure. The extreme overcrowding eventually caused the living conditions to become so deplorable and unsanitary that it also led to MSP's deadly riot in 1954. The tragic riot began on September 22, 1954, when then 19-year-old inmate Don William DeLapp called a guard to his cell complaining he was sick. When the guard came, DeLapp and another inmate overpowered him, grabbed his keys, and quickly began to turn other inmates loose. DeLapp immediately went to hunt down snitch informant Walter Lee Donnell. DeLapp and a few of his cohorts used a sledgehammer to get to the terrified Donnell and battered him beyond recognition with that same sledgehammer. They set fire in the prison buildings, the school, and a few of the factories. With firefighting seemingly impossible, blazes soon became an inferno that caused thick black smoke that was visible for up to 20 miles away. The wave of rioters continued to storm the buildings and eventually made their way to the warden's office. By this time, the whistle had been blown and the alarms began to blare, so within a matter of minutes, local and state police arrived in numbers, with armed troopers being sent to the prison's rooftops. Eventually, they were forced to open fire with their machine guns to force the rowdy prisoners to flee the prison yard and to help stop the riot. After 3 inmates, William Garrett, Donald Manning, and J.C. Swink, had all died from gunshot wounds after state troopers opened fire from the rooftops, this seemed to send a clear message to the rest of the inmates, and eventually order was restored. In the end, 4 inmates in total were killed and 50 others injured, including several prison guards. An estimated $5 million in damages had been done, with many of the factories being a total loss. Some claim the number of riot participants was nearly half of the near 3,000 inmates the prison held at that time. For these same reasons, the 1954 riot at Missouri State Penitentiary went down in history as one of the deadliest prison riots ever recorded. Despite its dark and troubled history, the penitentiary also played a role in the state's efforts at rehabilitation and reform, aiming to prepare the inmates for life outside of prison. But nothing could shake it from its painful reputation as the bloodiest 47 acres in America. Which shouldn't be such a surprise, since it's a known fact that Missouri State Penitentiary's death row and execution chamber were notorious in their own right. Before April 1989, the state of Missouri's death row was located at the Missouri State Penitentiary. Death row inmates were held in a below-ground unit and were isolated from the other inmates. Death row inmates did not leave their special death row facility, and all services were brought into their unit. Each death row inmate was allowed 1 hour of exercise per day in a fenced-off area next to the death row facility.
We are making our way downstairs to none other than death row. The controls are all still lit up. Unfortunately, it's locked. Nothing through here. B north, ADSEG. B south, ADSEG. C south, C north, segregation. South side, so they're all numbered. All the death row and segregation cells.
So we just got downstairs, and this is the death row area. And then down there in the basement is where they would put the criminally insane. So this is death row. So this kind of cage was here for several different reasons, but mainly it was to hose off prisoners. Some of them would kind of cover themselves in feces to try and get out of their cells. Some of them would be covered in blood from fights, and they would lock them in here and then just hose them down.
All right, so this is an actual poster board here of maybe 25 or so inmates that served time here at the Missouri State Penitentiary. And not only did they serve time here, but they served time in death row, which is right behind us, in the cells that are behind us. Some of them were executed here in the gas chamber, but not all of them. But some of these are very, very graphic, gruesome, but somewhat interesting. My man here, I was reading this one here. He ended up shot some dude 5 times with gunshot wounds to the chest and the base of the neck. After further investigation, it was determined that he was responsible and ended up getting death row. This guy, first degree murder from St. Louis. Subject was 60-year-old practicing physician. So this guy was a doctor who was convicted of killing his own young son in order to collect on his life insurance. Then over here, this guy here, Mose Young, he received death for capital murder from St. Louis. 3 counts of capital murder in 1983. He entered a pawn shop with a high-powered rifle and opened fire, executing 3 patrons of the shop, one of which was an 80-year-old man who he nearly shot his head off, scattering his brains all over the floor.
So this is the other side of death row. It's very similar. This little cell at the end is the only one like this. This is for basically the worst inmate here. You would put them back here, and that way the inmate would come out here, and then that's when the prison guards could handcuff them and put them in shackles and then walk them out, just so they had a little bit more security before they brought that inmate out.
And these are the suicide cells. As you can see, they have 2 different doors. One's wooden with a lock and has a little window in it. Number 17. But then also they had the cell. So you had 2 different doors, 2 different locks. And then these were actually, they're not padded here, but they were padded. And here's another one. Number 20. Suicidal inmates. Oh, this is all rusty. That's wild. Dude, it's crazy. It looks like a face. They do say this place is like one of the most haunted places in America. Missouri State Penitentiary. Guess the ghosts of the inmates that died here in death row are the biggest culprits of the hauntings. I love it. It's super cool. All right. Well, this is death row. We're just leaving death row now. Crazy, man. It feels like there's an energy about the death row. And in fact, knowing that inmates were actually executed here and lived here in those exact cells, and their photos are on the wall, some of them, just gives you this crazy vibe and energy. Pretty creepy. Now down here is even creepier because we're still talking about death row, but now we're talking about criminally insane. These inmates, patients, were so medicated, all they did was sleep and eat. That's all. The officials or doctors or whatever, they medicated them so heavily that that's all they did was sleep, get up, eat, go back to sleep. Because if they didn't take their medicine or if they didn't give them that much medication, they would try to hurt themselves, hurt others, cover themselves in feces, all sorts of disgusting acts and violence as well on not only the guards and the staff but other inmates. So yeah, that's why these are, doesn't look like they're very fun to live in. Pretty cramped, smaller. You see even like the entire cell door is smaller. It's wild to think about. And it's just crazy. Like it's just so dark energy down here. Man. Oh, I saw something over in this cell. Check this out. Somebody had their stash, bro, over here. Look how old those cigarettes are, bro. I guarantee that was a stash.
It's pretty wild.
That's wild, man. Pretty cool to see that.
So there's not much inmate art throughout this whole place because a lot of the paint has fell off the walls. See that old swastika right there, carved into the wall. And then right above that, you got a cross. You got some other stuff over here. People's names and dates. Roger, Dan. It's kind of hard to read it all. White Monty, St. Louis.
All right, so now we're on the other side of the death row and suicidal inmates and the criminally insane inmates. And this is segregation. I believe this is segregation. So this particular segregation cell, look at that. An Aryan Brotherhood. And a big old pot leaf there. At the SS. Skinheads. It's wild, that is wild. You can see some other carvings around here. I think he's got like counting down the days up here or something.
In 1985, officials from the Missouri State Penitentiary unearthed an old burial cell block that had predated the Civil War. The discovery happened after a court order was issued to put in a recreation yard for the inmates on death row. When the construction between housing units 2 and 3 began, crews started digging and eventually they hit something solid. This finding led to an exploration of 6 jail cells that were all built around the 1840s, which were part of the long-buried Centennial Hall. Based on research, this is now believed to be the oldest existing jail cells in the entire property. Another notable inmate worth mentioning is J.B. Firebug Johnson. In the 1880s, a man caught the public's attention with his antics while serving time in prison. That man was Firebug Johnson, one of the most notorious of all the inmates to ever serve a sentence at MSP. Johnson attempted to escape several times, but was best known for his most notorious act, setting a fire that destroyed more than $500,000 worth of property and the deaths of several inmates. Johnson was then convicted of arson and given an additional 12 years, after which he was locked in the dungeon for the majority of those years. After he was released, Firebug Johnson wrote a book entitled Buried Alive for 18 Years in the Missouri State Penitentiary.
So, Kansas City serial killer Robert Bardo was actually, he spent time here. He died here in 1992. He tortured and killed 6 men in the 80s. So he died here too. Another notable inmate.
So you can see that one's really decayed. I wish I could get in there and take a photograph of that one, but door's locked. So this cell's really cool. This is the medical cell. Check this out. Look at that really old gurney. The lab coat. Look at this old scale. Old oxygen tank.
Cell 33, Sonny Liston cell. This place had some famous inmates. James Earl Ray, Pretty Boy Floyd, and, of course, Sonny Liston. Interesting is that boxing became very popular in the prison. By 1949, prison officials began to pack audiences for boxing matches that would take place every month, and it really started to grow a lot. And one inmate loved the boxing program and began to spar and train every chance he could. He was broke and had little support as he was serving 5 years for armed robbery. However, that's all going to change. His talent was undeniable and he began knocking out people with a quickness, and his near flawless record eventually caught the attention of promoters. Liston was so good that he was released early in 1952. And unbelievably, the next year, he was the heavyweight champ. And here he is. A life-size poster. Right outside his cell.
So this is an old film projector. There used to be a screen that they would drop down so that all the inmates could watch movies. So these cells still have the pads on the beds. So this is a photo of this cell block back in 2019 when the tornado destroyed it and it ripped a hole through the roof. It's probably one of the coolest prison cell photos that I've seen, with the roof collapse like that, this huge cell block. And then that picture down there is with the new roof. They spent about over $900,000 to put a new roof on here after the tornado. So this door right here, this is the oldest cell door in the entire prison, dating back to the 1800s. I love the basket weave. They're my favorite type of prison doors to photograph. So this is the only one that's left. The rest of the prison, they changed the doors to just the regular jail doors or prison doors you usually see. Until 1964, cells held up to 6 men. By this time, plumbing and heating has been added to each housing unit. Each man was provided a bed and a locker to store their belongings. Some old sewing equipment.
One of the oldest isolation cells in this prison is right here. Look at the grime on this thing. And this is what the cell looked like. Jeez. It's all like curved. It's pretty wild. Just like, look at that. That's where the base plate thing, lock plate used to go in. Jeez. It's a big cell block. All the walks, and they're all labeled. Like this one here. 6 walk. And then there's 7 up there. And then probably 8 above us. We're pretty high up, as you can see. So the tornado in 2019 ripped the roof right off. So they had to spend almost $1 million and repair the roof. Which is why it's new, or looks new.
Alright, so we're kind of running out of time here. I thought 5 hours would be enough, but we only got about 30-40 minutes left, and we still have a whole nother building we haven't seen yet. So we're gonna make our way over there, try and be as quick as possible.
So this is the visitation at the gas chamber. Execution Look at that on the valves for the gas. You can kind of see through the window there. There's the chairs. And then this is the benches where the families would sit, victims, families, and lawyers and politicians sometimes. And look at all the valves. 4, 3, they're all numbered. 2. Wow, it's wild. You got a window over there and a window there. All right, the gas chamber. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen. Look at this bad boy. I've been wanting to see this for many of years now. And there is valve 1. And look at those gears and doors. And this is the window to peek in. Here you go. Flip the switch. On this side, you got cell block here, and another cell block here. And this is the one that actually has the bed in it, and the toilet and sink. So this is where basically a holding cell, where you would have your last meal, last rites, last prayers, all the above. And then over here we have, this is actual real mug shots of inmates that were executed in this gas chamber, in this very gas chamber. And in fact, the main reason why you see that mirror over there, every other one is a window, right? Is because it's a two-way mirror because of him right there. Mr. George Mercer, also known as Tiny Mercer, reputed gang member, ended up sexually assaulting a female and then killing her, murdering her. And he was the leader of a gang, so he had a long history. So he came in here to get executed, but they had his gang members that wanted to, and family that wanted to watch. So they put this mirror in so they could watch on this side without the victim's family seeing them and knowing that they were even here. That's why this mirror is here too.
Yeah, the mirror's there so that his family could look in and see him. And she also said that before his execution, this room didn't exist. So they had to build this room and build this door to bring his family in first before her family got here. So her family was right here, and they didn't know his family and the gang members were on this side. And the gang members and his family paid to get this room built so that they could watch his execution, which is just absolutely insane.
And the crazy thing about it, it was 1989. Yeah. We're not talking about 1920s. This was 1989. Now, the reason that there's a triangle cut out is so that the gas can come up, right?
Maybe she said something like that?
Yeah, the cyanide.
They would drop,
in there.
So it's in a bucket.
Yeah, it goes down there, and then it comes up through the holes in the chair and in the triangle here. So I guess that's what she was saying, is that the cyanide rises up in the gas. This one has a headrest. That one doesn't. I'd choose the one with the headrest. Look at these leg restraints. Yeah, look at that. I wonder if there's some eyeballs around here or something. Maybe in here. No. And these two were executed as well. They were from Kansas City, and they kidnapped a banker's kid. Tried to extort money, but they had already killed the kid. And they both got executed within days apart.
They both got executed within their first 12 days of coming to prison.
That's wild. That's wild.
That's insane.
That is so insane.
So this is hard to read, but it's a lethal injection report for Claude Minky. It says the time, so 12 o'clock the prisoner entered the chamber. 12:06 the doors closed. 12:07 gas strikes face. 12:08 head falls forward. 12:09 head falls backwards. 12:10 muscular movement apparently stopped. Wow. Alright, so that's officially going to wrap it up. We're outside the gas chamber right now. Just explored the huge prison. It's up on the hill. And we came down here to the gas chamber to finish it off. So we've been here for 5 hours now. We got the lady who gave us the tour. She's ready to kick us out. So it's time for us to get going. Hope you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure to give it a like, comment, subscribe, and we appreciate the support.